Chapter 12. Verks rested on the throne, using the mask to observe the goings-on throughout the city. The ghouls were falling quickly into line. One might have thought it would be difficult to rule over so many bodies, but the way they were all stacked mile high and downtrodden, a change in leadership was the least of their worries. Moors and the others were busying themselves with the restructuring of Zul's government. There were a lot of moving pieces, and not everyone had had the privilege of being present for their little town meeting. Through the nearby walls, he was able to glean that they were making good progress. Sneerin was quickly getting used to their new lodgings. She came out once or twice to show off her elegant new outfits. Verks told her that she looked beautiful, which was true. She had just retreated back to the residential wing when Verks witnessed something unexpected through the eyes of the mask. It was only a whisper at first, an odd, shadowy mass on the road just outside the gates, but the shapes quickly took familiar forms. They were still faint, several minutes in the future, but they didn't waver. A gross of goblin myrmidons, led by wolves, humans, a troll, and another figure whom Verks recognized immediately as the hooded, masked man Heartless of HSB. The bastard who had denied the Gnurgles assistance in their time of need. The sight of these visitors made Verks leap to his feet. The guard nearest the throne asked him what was wrong. "Impazila!" Verks cried. "Zonzo tokazdi!" Attackers, sound the alarm. The guard considered him for a moment, clearly wondering whether this new Bielzark might be losing his mind, but he did as he was told. Soon the whole of Zul was ringing with the bells of war. A moment later, the invaders arrived. The troops were amassed. They fell into line, battle-ready and bloodthirsty. Even the civilians leapt into action. It was as if a great tension building over the years had finally found release. These people had been waiting for this moment, and they hadn't even realized it until now. Verks watched it all unfold in shimmering ribbons, coalescing as surely as rain in the clouds. He took his place with Moors and Garf at the front of the lines. Soon there would be thunder. It was odd the way the invaders presented themselves. The Myrmidonila hung back a few yards while the ogress and the two human men stepped toward the gates. Dutifully, the guards held out their pikes. As they conversed briefly on the other side of the gates, Verks took note of some of the out-of-place folk who stayed back with the goblin horde. There were 4 humans and 2 wolves. It took him a moment, but he recognized 2 of the humans. One was the young sentry he had met that night in the woods on the other side. The other was the spider who had nearly bested him the night he left for Zul. He'd have been worried if not for the army of ghouls behind him. He couldn't hear, but he could guess what the ambassadors were saying to his guards. "I'm here for my mask, and its thieves shall be jailed. As a matter of fact, it's time to rid this place of your kind for good." Gnurgle seethed. He waited. One of the guards retreated through the little side door in the wall. He jogged through and out the other end a few yards away. He was about to give his message to a nearby marshal, but Verks hailed him. The guard jogged over. "Bielzark," he said, kneeling. Kliokiatayor." "Yes, what did they say?" The guard stood, looking uneasy. "Kliogotayor to Kliozuktras nezialon, Bielzark." "They say that they only want you, Bielzark." He shuffled a bit. "Kliogotayor to Klakozazulio Prenzoetre." "They say that they're here to arrest you." "Mos prenzo toi?" Verks scoffed. "Arrest me?" "Qui klugenzo iur nos iuruvalimet." "Why have they come with such an army?" "Kliogotayor to Kliovisviozo kozaprezakaz." "They say that they will use force if necessary." Verks guffawed. "Trazubliot. Archosium." "Excellent. Let us begin." Whistles and shouts of agreement. The guard looked confused. "Archosum, Bielzark." "Begin, Bielzark?" "Nichtos tutorario." "Open the gates." The guard bowed and returned to his post. Upon hearing his message, the mask maker looked frightened. The troll punched the ground, and the other man shook his head. Absolutely incredible. These people did not come here expecting a fight. A bit disappointing, yes, but advantageous. The messengers quickly retreated, and their forces got into formation. Then the gates opened, and Gnurgle's army marched through. "Gnurgle, vad ziveltos," Heartless said in poor Galgi. "Also miotavix es ablag tukro." "Gnurgle, don't do this. Give me the mask and nothing happens." "Zagila," Verks called. "Pratuingzu." "Archers, prepare to fire." The archers pulled back their bowstrings. Heartless produced an artifact from his pocket. It resembled a cross with a loop at the top. In the center was a gem that was glimmering with magical energy. He held the device out in front of him. Zivola ultiakaz, on leltark noskroko vizie. Jezul sigiezak. This is the last chance. The queen your power will recognize. You and Zul will be safe. Ingzul! Fire. The archers fired. The Myrmidons held their shields high, and a shimmering dome erupted from Heartless, protecting him and his friends. The volley struck no one. The force field quickly faded. It was powerful magic, and not cheap. It would take a while to recharge. The echo of the Ogress ran forward. Verks alerted the men, and she was shot. A brute like that wouldn't drop from a handful of arrows, but she was halted. Heartless yelled something to his younger compatriots, and after some hesitation, the two boys ran off into the trees. Verks caught the spider petting the white wolf that stood on two legs. It was only noticeable because he hadn't foreseen it through the mask. He also didn't foresee the wolf galloping toward him. It happened the same instant that the Myrmidons charged. The forces clashed in a storm of metal and blood. The white wolf pounced on Verks, and the second black wolf soon joined him. Verks stabbed wildly at his attackers. He was bitten, but there was no time to dwell. He got in one good strike at the white one's ribs. It yelped and backed off. The black one stood at its defense as Heartless came in with a healing spell. Excellent. Verks marched forward. The mask maker saw him coming, and his false white face frowned ruefully. He quickly finished doing what he could for his comrade and stood to face Verks, mask to mask. Verks waved his knife, testing how his movements affected the foreechoes of his opponent. The man held out his artifact and fired a crackling bolt of energy. It was impossible to evade entirely, but Verks was able to minimize its effect on him. He tumbled sideways, landed on his feet, and sprinted at the man. The ghoul swerved and danced, crafting the silver streamers before him like a weaver at the loom. He reached the man and slashed viciously. Somehow, the strike wasn't fatal. It was as if the mask maker was wearing some thin, hidden armor. In rage, Verks went to strike again, but a third body got in the way. Instantly, he knew why the mask had failed him. The Red Huntress, the spider, brandished a dagger of her own. Her expression spelled nothing but bloodlust. Her streamers jittered and danced around. So chaotic and widespread were the echoes that they obstructed much of Verks' forward vision. She slashed at him. His innate ghoul instincts kicked in, and he evaded. It went back and forth like that. He slashed, she dodged. She slashed, he knocked away her wrist with his own blade. A few hits landed, and eventually both daggers were red with blood. Suddenly, she cocked her head curiously. Instead of striking again, she leapt to the side. The body of one of Verks' own soldiers, apparently sent flying by a strike from the Ogress, slammed into Verks and he was thrown to the ground. By the time he got out from under the corpse and back to his feet, Heartless, the spider, and the white wolf were nowhere to be seen. But the battle raged on. He basked for just a moment in the smell of blood, sweat, and pheromones. The goblins were down to half, and the air was thick with their deaths. His own forces had suffered far fewer casualties. So few, in fact, that there weren't enough enemies left for every ghoul. Some of them were busying themselves by dragging their bloody prizes back through the gates. Others tended to minor injuries on the sidelines. Verks looked across the battlefield, noting the human and troll generals who were back-to-back, fending off a trio of monstrously strong ghouls with the help of the Black Wolf. Verks bounded through the fray toward them. He appeared before his men and ordered them to stop. The Ogress kept swinging until her companion stopped her. Everyone looked at Verks. "J'ai toi?" he asked. "Do you speak Galgi?" The troll nodded. "Osna bigwer." Of course. He addressed her. "Rogoth, sags got ubrak, ton murmedoni laendos. Agzag pochrok, sags gosayor os letarki, visos vis gulieza." "Ogress, you three will order the Myrmidons to surrender. You will all retreat and tell the Queen of our might." He paused for effect. "Esunad gulieza." "And our mercy." She did not look happy about that. She bared her hideous teeth, but nodded. She relayed the message to her allies, and the human blew a horn. Nearly everyone on the battlefield turned to see him waving. Verks stood too, and to communicate as clearly as possible, he dropped his knife and backed away from his enemies. His troops followed their echoes and allowed the 30 or so remaining Myrmidons to escape. The invaders regrouped several yards away and retreated down the road. Once they were out of sight, Verks picked up his dagger and punched the sky. Many of the soldiers did the same, and they were truly celebrating. The corpses were all dragged inside, and the gates were shut. The people of Zul quickly got to the task of stripping and cooking the Jagdziegel. There were steaks and sandwiches, soups and stews, grilled meat, pulled meat. A feast that was able to feed the entire upper class and then some. After a few sandwiches on spiced bread, Verks returned to town hall to rest. From behind the tree line, Alan, Jake, and the brownies listened anxiously to the screams and snarls, the clashing of metal against metal and bodies hitting the dirt. Kenneth had stayed in battle. Had he lost his mind? Holy shit, Jake whispered after a time. What? That was Verks Gnurgle. He pronounced it like H had. Gnurgle. According to S, it was supposed to be Gnergal, just 2 syllables, like the vowel had been chopped off of the head. Who? Asked Wit. The one with the crazy mask. Ah, she said. He was frightening. He was leading the army. If I had a mask like that, said Alan, and I strolled back into Farview with it, I could probably become king too. Whimsy giggled. I know, Alf, but this changes everything, doesn't it? Another voice appeared behind them. She snorted and said, It doesn't change a goddamn thing. They turned to see Laura H. and Wolfken. The latter two seemed badly hurt. Ken! They both got up and ran to him. He had a small but deep hole in his side, and the fur around the wound was stained red. I'm gonna cut that fucker in half, Laura continued. Get that stupid mask and get it over with. He almost killed Kenny. H laughed weakly. Almost killed me too if it wasn't for you. He was holding his shoulder, and his jacket was stained dark like Kenneth's fur. The 2 injured warriors took a seat beside one another. Good news is, he said, patting Wolfken's back, this one bit Gnurgle. Bit him hard. Wait, said Alan. You're telling me that Verks is going to have that mask and be a werewolf? Or like a ghoul wolf? H shook his head. God fucking damn it, said Laura. What is it? Well, said H, insecto-humanoids can be infected with lycanthropy, but it affects them differently. It's fatal a good 86% of the time. He let out a goopy cough. Don't worry, Carver. I already told you your compensation is locked in. Laura sat down by Jake. Alan was instantly jealous. So what now? Jake asked. Heartless shrugged, and his mask finally smiled. Laura will burn this town to the ground if it comes to it. And that's not a turn of phrase. Alan scratched his chin. He asked Laura, How do you do it? How exactly do you always win? Hey, yeah, said Jake. Did you train with ninjas your entire childhood? Maybe I did, Laura spat. She's got a luck demon, said H. A what? Laura sighed and held out her left arm. On the inside, near the wrist, was a tri-radially symmetrical tattoo. 3 dots with leaf-like swoops pouring out from the center. This is an Azeron, she explained. Sounds like an antidepressant, said Jake. Side effects may include... Alan shushed him. What does it do? It connects me to a spirit or entity or whatever, she explained. Some people call it a luck demon. I just call it one powerful son of a bitch. Damn, said Jake. Where do I get one? A demon? I don't know, they just show up. That's so cool, said Alan. That reminds me, she said, addressing Wolfken. There's a tattoo you should get. It's called... Gilpner? Gleipnir, said H. He was still wincing, but seemed mostly okay. It's a magically spiked ink that helps wolves control their transformations. What do you think about that? Alan asked Kenneth. Wolfken woofed in the affirmative. We should totally look into that once this is over, said Jake. Alan turned to Laura. Will you stick around after you get your reward? We'll see, she said absently. She was staring at nothing in the distance with a furrowed brow. Suddenly, she reached into her bag and pulled out the protomask H had given her. She strapped it on and peered through the trees in the direction of Zul. I bet I could climb those walls, she said, mostly to herself. Why don't we just, wait? Said Jake. You said the guy was going to die either way. Good idea, said Laura. We'll just set up camp right here for a few days. Once he's dead, someone will just hand us the mask on a silk pillow. There's no guarantee he was even infected, said Al. Good point, said H. Too bad we can't just dress up like ghouls, Alan mused, and walk right through the doors like we did in the Mount. Can we not do that? Asked Wit. I speak Galgi. Based on the way she pronounced Galgi, Alan believed her. Okay, said Laura. You fly in your makeup artist from Hollywood, and we're golden. We could use glamours. What's that? Asked Jake. Alan knew this one. That's how fairies disguise themselves as humans in folklore, right? Wit nodded.
Wart is good at it. We used to do it frequently when we lived with the satyr.
Alan was curious about the satyr, but the conversation kept moving. Wait, really? Said Laura. Wart bowed. Yes. Whimsy did a little hop.
Glamour, glamour, glamour.
She leaned on Wart's arm and gazed up at her.
Make us pretty, Wart.
Okay. Hold up, said Jake. Won't the mask just see through the disguise? The mask probably would see through a glamour, said H. But Verx isn't guarding the gates. Right, said Laura. If we can get in, I can take it from there. And what would our job be? Asked Alan. A distraction. You mean bait, said Jake. No, I mean what I said. He'll be dead before he even realizes I'm there. You should stay here, said H. The girls can go. They're all adults. Wait, they are? Kenneth made a weird, woogling, panting noise that Alan assumed was a laugh. I want to go, said Alan. After a moment's hesitation, Jake mumbled, Yeah, me too. Sounds good to me, said Laura. Wart, what do you need us to do? The way Wit explained it, in order to create a glamour, they would need to appease a certain mischief spirit. It had a particular sense of humor, as she put it. They had to find things that looked like other things to make it happy. They scoured the woods, regrouping after an hour or so with a pile of sticks, rocks, and other detritus that bore varying levels of likeness to faces and animals. Jake found a large green insect that looked like a leaf, which was apparently especially good. They all sat in a circle around the pile, except H and Kenneth, who were still injured. Wart stood over the pile and sprinkled powder from a pouch. Amazingly, the brownish powder glittered in neon colors as it fell. Wispy ribbons of magical energy rose up like flames from the pile and formed into 100 laughing faces which faded as the energy wrapped around everyone's bodies.
Close your eyes,
Wit instructed them. Everyone did so, and Alan heard Wart walking around the circle. She touched his forehead as she passed. Once finished, she said, Open, and everyone opened their eyes. Opaque swirls of energy surrounded and obscured the party. The vapor quickly dissipated, though, and suddenly the humans and goblins in the circle had become ghouls. They were still more or less recognizable as themselves, but the transformation was dramatic. Laura immediately strapped on her proto-mask and looked around. Can you see through the glamour? Asked Alan. His voice sounded weird and scratchy.
Yeah, she said, but it'll have to do.
This is sick, said Jake. He was feeling his feathery antennae. Alan reached up and felt his own. His fingers could feel the antennae, but not vice versa. It's like a really good costume. Can we take it off, though?
If you wish it away, said Wit, it will disappear. Rad.
So what's the plan?
You and the goblins will go through the gates, Laura explained. Don't speak any English. Wit will do all the talking. Get your story straight ahead of time. Your only job is keeping Verx busy, so if he's wearing the mask, don't run.
So just let him kill us, Jake said. Laura thought for what felt like a little too long.
H can give you his boomstick, and...
She snapped her fingers finally.
Hold on to my bag. That way, you dying will be bad luck for me.
What if somebody dies who isn't holding it, said Alan.
Fuck.
She thought some more, then reached into the bag. She handed an item to each of them. A bag of money for Alan, her crossbow for Jake, a bracelet for Whimsy, and the bag itself to Wit.
Wart, you'll have to stay behind.
Wart chuckled, shook her head, and pointed to Wit and Whimsy. Never. Laura shrugged.
I hope you make it out alive.
Wart bowed and took her place beside the other two. With the glamour, the goblins looked at least a foot taller. Curious, Alan placed a hand on Wart's elevated shoulder. It was solid. Laura strapped the proto-mask around her face.
Ready, kids?
They nodded and began walking towards Zool. Be careful, H called after them. Kenneth woofed. And good luck, he chuckled weakly. Laura flipped him off.